The state of Virginia has approved regulations governing the use of restraint and seclusion in public schools effective January 1st, 2021. In accordance with the new regulations, this training is required for all employees of Campbell County Schools. This training will address an overview of restraint and seclusion, ways to positively support students in an effort to prevent and de-escalate situations, and Campbell County policies and procedures in the event that physical restraints are used. As identified by the U.S. Department of Education, schools should be a safe and healthy environment in which America's children can learn, develop, and participate in instructional programs that promote high levels of academic achievement. You serve a vital role in establishing such an environment. The new regulations in Virginia identify specific parameters when using restraints, including defining what is considered to be an instance of restraint, under what conditions restraint is to be used, required notification, reporting, and follow-up when restraint is used, and establishes the required training of all school personnel. Restraint is defined as any immobilization or restriction that reduces a student's ability to move freely. School divisions are not permitted to utilize pharmacological or mechanical restraints in Virginia. Only physical restraint is permitted under certain circumstances. There are many physical interactions with students that are not considered to be restraint. These include briefly holding a student to provide comfort, holding a student's hand as an escort, and the use of brief incidental physical contact in order to maintain control of a situation. In addition to defining restraint, the new regulations also include parameters regarding the use of seclusion. Seclusion is the involuntary confinement of a student alone in a room or an area where a student is prevented from leaving. Seclusion is not the same as exclusion, timeout, or the relocation of a student to a separate area to either regain composure or to conduct an investigation. Campbell County Public Schools prohibits the use of seclusion. Restraint is only utilized as a last resort when other interventions have been or would most likely be ineffective. Under this circumstance, restraint may only be used when a student poses imminent risk of serious harm to self or others, to quell a disturbance or to remove a student from the scene of a disturbance in which such student behavior or damage to property threatens serious harm to self or others, to defend self or others from serious harm or injury, to obtain possession of a controlled substance or paraphernalia that are upon the person or within the student's control, or to obtain possession of weapons or dangerous items that are upon the person or within the student's control. Restraint should never be used solely as a result of non-compliance or disrespect, de-escalation of a situation taking too long, or property destruction alone. In some situations, property destruction may not pose a serious safety risk. Property destruction only meets the criteria of restraint if there is a threat of harm to self or others. Remember, restraint is used only as a last resort in which there is imminent risk of serious harm. Campbell County Schools believes that all students have the right to be treated with dignity and respect, free of abuse. Under most circumstances, general best practices to support positive behaviors can help you avoid the need for instituting physical restraint. In order to support positive behaviors, it is important that we understand the role that behavior serves in our students' daily lives. All behavior serves a purpose. In most cases, behavior is communicating something. As a result, we can help students by teaching them how to get their wants and needs met in an appropriate manner. There are many things we can do prior to a crisis situation to help establish appropriate behaviors in all school environments. One support is the use of reinforcement. Reinforcement is considered to be anything that increases a behavior. Our role is to reinforce the behaviors we want to see more. An example of reinforcement may be praising a student for completing a task appropriately. In the classroom, this may include a statement such as, "I like the way you are completing your independent work so quietly." In the cafeteria, this may translate into a statement such as, "Thank you so much for waiting patiently in line." On the bus, reinforcement may be delivered by saying, "I like the way you took your seat so quickly." Reinforcement is not the same as bribery. Bribery occurs after a concern arises and serves as a means of coercing a student into compliance. Reinforcement can be used well before a concern arises and is a part of best practices to support positive behaviors. Sometimes we have a reason to suspect that adverse behaviors are more likely to occur. In these situations, there are ways that we can prevent the likelihood of them occurring. Antecedent-based interventions are a set of best practices to prevent certain behaviors from occurring. Antecedent-based interventions are used prior to the onset of an anticipated behavior. Examples include assigning specific seating to avoid peer conflicts, giving students a heads up prior to a change, offering students choice, providing attention or reinforcement for positive behaviors, or pairing yourself with positive interactions. At times, a crisis situation cannot be prevented and de-escalation of the situation is needed. Campbell County Public Schools utilizes approved approaches from safety care and other evidence-based programs to support the appropriate use of de-escalation and restraint interventions. One basic de-escalation strategy is to offer a student assistance. Remember, behavior is communicative. Therefore, a student may be communicating frustration. It is recommended that assistance is offered early in a situation to avoid further escalation. Simply asking, "Is there something you need help with?" is appropriate. If the student communicates a specific need, provide the requested assistance as appropriate. Sometimes a student may not want assistance, or you may be unable to provide the requested assistance. In such situations, prompting may be a helpful de-escalation strategy. Prompting is telling a student what to do instead of what not to do. While verbal prompting may be most common, gestural and visual prompting can also be helpful. Pointing, using hand signals, or using picture representations can help identify what a student is expected to do. Upon completion of the directive, deliver praise acknowledging student compliance. At times, providing assistance or prompting may not lead to de-escalation of a situation. Other times, additional help may be needed before an intervention begins. In these situations, the wait strategy may help avoid further escalation. The wait strategy is employed by refraining from talking or drawing attention to the student while maintaining a safe environment. A helpful acronym to help guide this strategy is to ask, "Why am I talking?" Despite our best efforts to prevent and de-escalate crisis situations, dangerous situations can still occur. Remember, restraint is only utilized as a last resort when other interventions have been or would most likely be ineffective under the circumstances we've previously identified. Campbell County Schools enacts policies that encourage the use of positive behavior interventions and supports to reduce instances of restraint, establishes procedures for monitoring, notification, and reporting instances of restraint, and prohibits the use of seclusion. Campbell County Schools enacts specific procedures that adhere to the Virginia regulations governing the use of restraint in public schools that include preventative measures, documentation, parent notification, and follow-up measures. Procedures are available on the division's website. It is important to note that a restraint should be ended when the imminent risk of serious harm has ended. The ending of imminent risk of serious harm may be a result of an environmental change or actual student de-escalation. This does not mean that a student will be fully calm or de-escalated prior to the release of a restraint. Any staff member may be required to restrain a student if there is imminent risk of serious harm. However, each school has a group of uniquely trained staff to support the de-escalation process and restraint procedures. Anytime there is an instance of restraint, staff members are responsible for describing the incident that justifies the needs for the restraint and documenting the incident. The incident should be reported immediately to your principal or immediate supervisor. Together, we can promote a safe and respectful learning environment for all students.